Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I'm going to be doing a review of Lightning Literature Grade 4. So this was our second year using Lightning Literature. We used Grade 3 our third grade year, used Grade 4 our fourth grade year, and we are currently using Grade 5 for my 10-year-old. So I'm going to be going over the things I liked about it, the things I disliked about it, and what my daughter thought of it. So like I said, we've been using Lightning Literature for multiple years. It's worked really well for us. Now my daughter, language arts comes pretty easily to her. It's one of her areas she actually excels in, so it's kind of hard to find things that challenge her. But there are good things I really like about this, so I'll start with the things I like. So the books. I do like the book selection that we've seen in Lightning Literature. I think they're very age appropriate. They're usually on the book list you see for those grade levels. So really quick, I'll go over the books. The Earth's Dragon Awakes. So this was historical fiction. I do like the variety that it provides. It provides a lot of different perspectives, different types of writing. Morning Girl, so this was different perspectives. The One and Only Ivan, this book led to my daughter binge reading all the Katherine Applegate books, and we watched the movie as well. So again, I like that the books lead into other books that she might be interested in. There's poetry in this, which is nice. So we did Gone Fishing, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, The Family Under the Bridge. And again, I like the different sizes of this. So some of them are obviously really large, and some of them are just short reads. So I like that it switches that up. Nim's Island, The Dreamer, Love That Dog, this is poetry. The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, again, this is one of those we read and watched the movie too. Tuck Everlasting, and The Burrows. And that's the order in which you read the book. So I do like the variety, lots of perspectives there, different sized books. I like that it brought up really good discussion questions. So Love That Dog, it's a poetry, and in the end you realize it's the narrator, the person writing the poem, was talking about their dog that died. So that is a good discussion, I think, about grief and things like that. Where the Mountain Meets the Moon was good on cultural heritage and learning about that. My daughter really did enjoy the poetry, and it definitely sparked an interest in poetry for her. One of the writing assignments for the poetry units was to write your own poetry, so that really got her into poetry, which she wasn't really into that much before. Same thing with The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. This brought up really good discussions, and we watched the movie, and as a family we discussed what the book was about and what this boy was capable of doing. I do like, so with Lightning Literature, there's a reading component. You read, it does have comprehension questions, and then it has a grammar lesson. I do like that the grammar lessons are really just short chunks. I like that they're directly related to the book that they're reading, so all the examples in it are related to whatever book you're reading. So for example, this would be grammar, declarative sentences, and it breaks down and it uses examples from the book. I think that's a great way to learn grammar. I like that Lightning Literature tells you in the beginning that it's really hard. You'll never memorize all the crazy rules that come with grammar, but being exposed to them is how we remember them, and reading them is how we remember them. So bringing in the literature component to introduce the grammar concepts, I think works really well, at least for my daughter. I like that pretty much it's independent for my daughter. So she read all of the third grade books independently. She read all the fourth grade books independently. Again, that's my daughter. She loves to read. She's an avid reader. That can be different for each child. If I had to read all of these myself, I don't think I would be very much into the program. But I think that that independent thing is really good for her because she knows what she's very organized. She wants to get it done. She knows exactly what she has to do, and it doesn't take her a ton of time to read. This is not a time-consuming thing. She can read pretty quickly, do the grammar lesson rather easily and quickly as well. So it's not taking huge amounts of time. I do like that to kind of foster that independence. In the beginning of each, there's a student checklist of what they'll have to do for those kids who like, checking boxes off. And then as you can see here, each day is labeled, so they know which day. So I don't have to put bookmarks, or it is a 4-day program, which is also nice. So I don't have to put bookmarks or write things in here. She knows day 1 is Monday, day 2 is Tuesday, and so on and so on. So she can be proactive. If she feels like getting more done in one day than another, she can go ahead and do that. So it's really helped with time management and really helping her figure out her own schedule and how she wants to work. So that's been really good. I do like that there's a poetry aspect. Like I said before, we did poetry a little last year, but she wasn't really into writing it or expressing it. So maybe it's just, the magical age of 9 and 10, but going over the different types of poetry and the different ways you can write poetry really inspired her to start writing her own poetry. Was great. Like I said with Only Ivan, that inspired her to read other books by the author, just like the poetry units inspired her to write different types of poetry, and that's something she still enjoys to do now. I do like that it kind of builds upon itself, so it will go a little bit deeper. So when you're talking about, past tense verbs, it will go a little more depth the next year of Lightning Literature, so you're definitely getting that review in within the years. I do like that after every book, you get a book discussion. So, and it has in the teacher guide all the answers and everything for you. I didn't read any of these books, so I do appreciate that it has the answers. But you go over the theme, the story, the character, the setting, the external details, internal details, conflict, and some discussion questions to go with. So it's having a book discussion after every book, which my daughter really liked because she likes to talk about books and go over those elements. And what I would make a Word document, and I would just separate the setting and all those things. So she would fill it out as we talked, and I kept that as a sample of her portfolio, that she can break down the setting, the internal details, external details, if there's any symbolism, conflict, those types of things. So she's learning how to analyze literature at the same time as having an actual book discussion. So that was really good. One thing I did like, so there are composition work in here, so it does give you composition, but this will kind of get into what I don't like. The composition, I think, in Lightning Literature is a weaker component. That's something you see often heard when reviewing Lightning Literature. For me, it doesn't give enough guidance as the teacher. I am not someone who is strong in writing. It's something I never really learned well, honestly, in school, besides the classic 5-paragraph essay. But beyond that, I don't have a lot of skill in that area. So I definitely needed more than Lightning Literature was able to give, and I would say that was one of the negatives. I think if you are a natural writer, you might not need that extra guidance, but I definitely did. So what I did to supplement that is for the first half of Lightning Literature, we did the composition assignments, because again, the composition assignments, the writing assignments, related to the book. So for example, if we were doing the first book, Earth Dragon Awakes, this is historical fiction, the assignment was to write their own historical fiction. And it kind of does outline it for you, but it doesn't really give you step-by-step that structure of how to put a paper together. And same thing with Morning Girl. The assignment was to write a personal essay in your perspective. One and Only Ivan was a persuasive essay because, again, it's talking about the fine line between animals and entertainment, and the book is about teaching people about that, so she had to write a persuasive essay. So I do like how they tie in, and we did utilize a lot of the composition assignments. But what I did is we had done IEW year 1, so this is year 2 because I'm not going upstairs to get year 1. We are currently working on year 2, but I have an entire video on how I combine IEW and Lightning Literature for the composition. But to pretty much sum it up, what I do is I use the little yellow outline pages that IEW gives you on how to write papers, because all of the papers she wrote pretty much fit into the categories that IEW teaches the structure to. So we just utilized that, and we did that all the way until week 25. So a big chunk of Lightning Literature, we used the composition, but just brought in the elements and structure of IEW to make it easier for my daughter. And she did. The first paper she wrote was like 4 pages, her historical fiction she wrote about the pandemic. She was able to, again, get that out really quick because she had the structure that IEW provided. But I don't think Lightning Literature in itself provides enough of that structure, especially as you get into the older levels. Something I did not also like is that, so I said I like how it was labeled week the week, and then day 1, day 2. In week 35, so almost the very end of it, the numbering was off by a couple days. So my daughter got confused which day she was supposed to doing. So there was I don't know if it was a printing error or it was just off, but one of the last weeks, the numbering was off. Just a slight hiccup that's not hard to, but it was a little annoying having to go back and figure out what day was which for my daughter, because again, I like the independent aspect of that, not having to number everything. Something else I don't like is that the questions are just comprehension questions. They are not critical thinking, they're not deep thinking, they are literally asking you the question to see if you comprehended, which I get. Reading comprehension is important, but again, my daughter is an avid reader, so I'm not too concerned about reading comprehension. She can usually summarize the entire book to me without any issues. And I think it's good for her to be able to pull those elements and information out, because that's something she will be tested on, obviously, in her future. But I think it would be nice if they had some more deeper thinking, critical thinking questions, not just the bare minimum. So we don't use this for any type of critical thinking, or I mean, we do the book discussions at the end, and that's, you know, kind of her opinion and her thoughts on this, but it's more pulling out elements of the book, not necessarily really analyzing everything. So I'm a little disappointed that there aren't more different types of questions. Like Torchlight is something we do. Those bring in really deep conversational questions that Lightning Literature does not. And that's one of the reasons that we combine Torchlight as well. And we do Torchlight is because it provides that. This is just reading comprehension and grammar, a little bit of writing instruction. That's how we use it. One thing I didn't like about the writing is usually the assignments, they give you 2 weeks to write, which was way longer than my daughter needed. Like I said, she can do an entire 5-paragraph paper in probably a day or two, and it will give you an entire 2 weeks to do it. So she would usually finish the writing assignment at Lightning Literature within the first couple days, and then the entire next week she wouldn't have any type of, even after I reviewed it and she corrected it, she wouldn't have any other stuff she had to do for it. But at the same time, I don't think it was challenging her writing-wise, because she had so much extra time to get it done, because she was a very efficient writer after using IEW. And then the last thing I really don't like about Lightning Literature in general is it doesn't have any type of glossary or index. So you're learning lots of different things: declarative sentence, verbs, present tense, all the grammar things, right? So when you have a review section, it doesn't tell you where to pull that information from. So many times we would get the grammar dictionary down, and I would have her look in, so what is that? Again, we don't remember exactly what that meant. I wish there was reference numbers, or at least an index or glossary in the back that told you, okay, when you wanted to learn about declarative sentences, these are the lessons that it talked about. That would make it so much easier to navigate, especially since most of these grammar concepts you're not going to memorize and remember every single detail. Being able to recall the information, being able to look it up in the book and be like, oh yeah, that's what it meant, and be able to do the assignment, I think that's really important. And I wish Lightning Literature would have some type of supplement, or in the back, at least the index, telling you where those concepts are being taught. So when you review or you come back to it in a paper, it's easier to figure it out than flipping through the entire big book or getting down a grammar dictionary to try to figure out what that meant again. One thing I did like about the writing is, at least the first 25 weeks we did, is she was exposed to many different types of writing. So she did historical fiction, she did a personal essay, persuasive essay, Mad Lib poetry, she wrote about her cultural heritage, she learned how to write a letter, she wrote a research paper, she did an interview, a story, and a descriptive paper. So what I had her do with that is, again, she would just write in her notebook all that, and she wrote 2-3 pages for every story. The poetry was obviously just like a paragraph or things like that, but it was not difficult for her. She didn't struggle with it at all. Sometimes she would need some prompting from me, or there's a balloon behind me in case you wonder what's floating. There is a balloon floating. But she often just leaned on the structure pages and things she learned in IEW, and it just flowed awesomely. So what we're doing for 5th grade actually is, I've taken out the composition part of Lightning Literature completely while she does Year 2 Level A. When she finishes this, because she'll finish this before the end of the year, because this only takes about 6 months, I will have her use, again, the resources she learned in IEW to finish the second half of Lightning Literature. So she'll be doing the composition work in Lightning Literature once she finishes this. So that is our thoughts. My daughter does enjoy Lightning Literature. She enjoys the books. I personally enjoy that she's exposed to different types of books. It's very easy for kids to get kind of stuck on just one type of book. But it has led to little rabbit holes of different books and different types of books she's started reading. So I think that's really nice. She likes the variety. The only book she did not like, which I agree, was Nim's Island. We both kind of found it boring, and we watched the movie after it, and it's not very plausible. So I'm not sure why this is so popular in this age group to read, but it could be because neither of us really like that magical, mythical kind of world. But that was the rest she liked, but that one was a no-go. So Nim's Island was not our favorite, but other than that, all the books went well. She likes that she's independent. I can pretty much hand it to her, and she can go off and do it. I do check it on a daily basis, like it says day 1, day 2, day 3, to make sure she's understanding the concepts, especially since we've gotten into 5th grade. I've noticed that there's some things she's not understanding and that we need to go through together, and that's completely fine. But that's why I check it every day, because some of these concepts we're learning and reviewing, but some of them are really new and kind of complicated to understand. So having that teacher aspect does help, but she really likes the independence of it, and I will continue using it as long as it works. So if you have any specific questions about Lightning Literature Grade 4, let me know down in the comments below. If not, thank you for watching.